Sometimes it's the little things. I'm Joseph. This is Input English. Let's get started considering that sometimes it's the little things. Actually, I would suggest that often it is the little things. Now in the 21st century, we can look around and see big events, big world events, things that occurred that are so astonishing that you remember where you were when you heard about it. When the World Trade Center was destroyed, people were astonished. It was extraordinary. Many other events were similarly memorable. But as we look at those big world events, they sculpted the world, they changed the world, they changed the behavior of populations, but in terms of changing our own personal trajectory and the way our lives evolved, frequently these gigantic events had little or no effect on us personally. Frequently, it's just some of the little things, the little influences that occur in life that turn out to have big effects. And so what I'm doing today is inviting you to think about these concepts and think about your own experience. So for this, I have a story, and the story is about me. When I was a teenager, my dad purchased an electronic device. Now, by 21st century standards, it was incredibly primitive. It is what we would call a boombox. It was a portable radio with speakers, but it also had a cassette feature. That is, it could play and record cassette tapes. One of its features was that you could record music or anything off the radio by pushing the red record button and the play button, and it would record whatever is coming in on that radio channel, that radio feed. Well, this was very new for me, so as I was using this device, I tuned it into the classical music station. Now, in that era, I didn't know very much about classical music other than some of the few things my parents had played on their stereo. I realized that I had a gold mine. I could record some of these great pieces of music and save them on cassettes and then play them again. It was like getting a free record collection off the radio. Being fairly compulsive, I didn't want to record the chatter of the announcer. I just wanted a clean recording from beginning to end with no voice. I just wanted the recording as if I was playing a record, as if I was playing it from a recording. This cassette recorder had no features for editing what I had recorded. So I had to practice listening for when the announcer queued up the music and then time the start of the recording so that I would catch the entire recording. That took some practice. A lot of my early recordings started 5 to 10 seconds into the piece, and for my purposes rendered them useless. Admittedly, I was fairly compulsive at the time. Often is the case that if you are trying to record something, whether by video or by photography or by audio recording, your attention as the creator of the recording is averted somewhat from the content itself. We're so busy fiddling with the video camera or the audio device that we actually don't experience what's happening directly. I was so focused on getting a clean recording that I did not hear and make a note of the name of the piece that I was recording. So on several occasions, I wound up with cassettes with recordings of great music, but I had no idea the composer or the orchestra. I knew nothing about it. I didn't know what these pieces were. But since I played them back many times, I learned to really like them. So this was an interesting problem. I had a couple of pieces in particular which were so exciting and so extraordinary, it was very frustrating to me to not be able to identify them. Now, this may sound odd to you, the listener, because now we have things like SoundHound and AI, and so you can actually play a music clip into a device and it will identify it for you. And I use that feature today, but it didn't exist when I was a teenager. The internet didn't exist. AI didn't exist. But true intelligence did exist. Since I was unable to identify these pieces and I had tremendous affinity for them, I took the cassettes into band, and after the band rehearsal, I found the band director and asked if I could play the pieces for him. Maybe he could identify them. He thought that was a great idea, and so I did just that. I played 2 pieces for him, and he had no idea what they were. But he did have an idea, a very good idea. He said, I don't know what these are. They're beautiful. They're fantastic, but I can't identify them. However, later this week, Mr. K will be here, and he will know what they are. So who is Mr. K? Well, his last name starts with a K. On this channel, I don't publish pictures of people or people's identity. No, I don't have that authority or intent. But Mr. K was a music educator, and he was an interesting fellow. He still is. He's living. He had been with the Chicago Symphony, but had moved into our area. He had conducted the local symphony orchestra, but he also made contacts with band directors and chorus directors in that whole region. And over the years, he visited hundreds of bands and choruses and participated in their programs as a guest conductor. He was a favorite in our band. When he would show up, we knew we were going to learn something, we were going to be treated with respect, and we were going to have fun. Those were good days. Now, this was not to detract from our band director, who was another tremendous music educator who deserved our respect as well. These 2 fellows worked together to provide a very rich environment for us, young, developing musicians. So, exactly as predicted, Mr. K showed up and rehearsed the band. And after the rehearsal, I found him and asked if I could play this cassette with this striking piece of music so that he might identify it. He said, sure. There were several students standing around. People were interested in him, what he had to say, but also what we were doing. This was a fun little science experiment of identifying an interesting piece of music. So as I recall, it was me, the band director, Mr. K, and a handful of students in the band room after rehearsal. I turned on the cassette player and the music started coming out, just like I had recorded it. But something odd happened. Mr. K started conducting the music. He started waving his hands and cueing musicians. He started cueing musicians to come in as if he was conducting a symphony orchestra. I was astonished. The students were astonished. The band director was astonished. We just stood there and watched this fellow conduct a recording. He was in his own world. And then he started talking. While he was conducting, he said, "No, you're dragging. You're going too slow. No, not that slow. No." And he tried to speed up this orchestra, but of course the orchestra was on a recording. There was no speeding it up. So he was in an imaginary conflict with a group of musicians who was represented only in a recording. I don't think we played the entire piece. I think he signaled that it was time to turn it off after a few minutes. And so I turned it off. And he said that was Samuel Barber's Medea's Meditation and Dance of Vengeance. It was recorded by the New York Philharmonic, and the conductor was Thomas Shippers. How did this guy know that? How could he know all that? So I asked him, "How did you know that?" He said, "Well, it's simple. It's the only recording available. No one else has recorded it." Oh, okay. Well, that was a long time ago, and a lot of people have recorded this fine piece of music. I'm not going to play it for you. There are issues of putting music on YouTube without getting, copyright release, and I'm telling a story, not trying to play music. However, Medea's Meditation and Dance of Vengeance is a piece by Samuel Barber that is recorded widely and is present on YouTube. There are several very good recordings. I like the recording by Shippers, the New York Philharmonic. I like the version by the St. Louis Symphony and Leonard Slotkin. There are lots of recordings. This is based on the ancient Greek myth of Medea. Well, subsequent to identifying that piece, I persuaded my parents to purchase the recording, the same recording, the only one that existed at the time, and I played it a lot. When I bought the whole album with all that music on it, I got a lot more compositions by Samuel Barber. Now, it turns out we have a bit of a connection with Samuel Barber because friends of our family lived in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and we would go visit them from time to time. They were old friends of my parents, and so we would go to Westchester and visit them. When I was in graduate school in Philadelphia, I went and visited them in Westchester. One of their neighbors, right there on their street, was a retired musician composer named Samuel Barber. Yes, he was living 3 doors down from friends of our family. Now, I did not ask to be introduced to him. I didn't try to talk to him or go knock on his door. It was just interesting to know that he lived right down the street from friends of our family. The other piece that I played for Mr. K was identified less dramatically, but correctly identified as Béla Bartók's Concerto for Orchestra. These two pieces were my entry into a lifelong affinity for classical music. These were the pieces that sparked my interest. These were the ones that allowed me to discover Gustav Mahler. I can identify these little things, that is, the access I had to a cassette recorder device, the accident of recording 2 beautiful pieces of music, the simple fact that Mr. K chose to come to our band to offer his assistance in our education, and the fact that he could identify these pieces in an instant, these little things had a profound effect on me. YouTube can be very influential on humans. If you look at my story, the influence on me was human influence. With YouTube, we find ourselves in one-way contact with other human beings, and the content they create is sometimes very influential. My decision to learn the Spanish language and to learn how to speak Spanish came from influence on YouTube. That influence led me to starting this channel. But the through line with all of these ideas is that the influence is human influence. I have never heard one instance of a person having a major influence on their life that they attribute to an AI. There was a lot of talk during 2024 that AI would take over language learning. All of us creating content would just be replaced by AI. That might occur in the future, but today, in 2025, most of the AI content that I see for language learning is just boring. It may be possible for AI to get to a level that it will not be boring, but for now, I think we should continue creating this content because humans are influenced by humans. And sometimes it's the little things. And if you like videos like this, be sure to click on this one next. See you soon.